Association, we've got Pete Vandermeer. Big hand.
So rather than doing much sanding up here, I want to just do a couple quick things about what I use for sanding. I do almost all power sanding. When Rudy Lopez was around, he talked about using some of the rotary discs on a couple of handheld things, and these are actually very good if you're getting down into a deep angle. I don't know if any of you remember him talking about doing this, but you can buy these things. But actually, to make one, all you have to do is take a piece of 5/16 inch threaded rod. I took a bicycle, or actually it was a rollerblade bearing, and turned a little piece, glued it onto a piece of rubber and some of the stick-on Velcro. And if you've never turned with one of these or sanded with one of these, it's really easy. It's non-powered. It powers as it spins. And it uses 3-inch discs for these. Most of what I use actually are 5-inch discs, and what I use are the 3M flexible pads that cost about $7 each. They come with the Velcro the Velcro teeth. They're pretty cheap, and I go through those things just using a drill. But recently I've started using the 3-inch discs, and I found a much cheaper solution to sandpaper than anything I'd ever found in terms of discs. If you go to an auto supply store, they will sell you what is basically this semi-transparent, what do you call this stuff? Abranet. Yeah, so you can get about a 60-foot roll of Abranet in different grades at the auto parts stores, and you just rip off a 3-inch piece of it and stick it on. The corners actually feather in quite nicely. These cost almost nothing compared to the 3-inch discs that you can buy from Vince's. Or you can go to Klingspor. I don't know if any of you buy sandpaper from Klingspor, Klingspor. You can buy a box of their roll ends for about $20, and you'll get 20 pounds of roll ends. Or you can get their strips, 3-inch wide strips, which have the backing on it, and you just cut off a 3-inch piece and stick it on, and this stuff lasts just as long as any of the discs from Vince's, and you'll get, I don't know, 100 of them for $2. It's really cheap. So the other thing that I really want to talk about is safety on sanding. Sanding dust is dangerous. It's probably not that bad to sand things like maple, but if you're sanding any of the exotics, you're going to breathe it. Even if you think you've got a dust collector above, at the very least, use N95 masks. If you are being any more purist, one of these things costs less than $20. If you sand, even with my outdoor blowing vent system and with my overhead, at the end of a couple days of using it, if you look at the filters, they're all covered with dust. If you go in after working on woodworking for a while and you blow your nose and it comes out brown, you've done damage to yourself. Like talking about, using pewter with lead, one of our goals is not to die from doing this. Don't blow out your lungs. You only have 2 of them and you won't get any spares. If you're using these type of things, you can also get the chemical absorbing masks. If you're doing anything with acetone or DNA or even any of the exotic lacquers, you need to use some kind of a chemical absorber while you're doing it if you're going to do this inside of a building. Even if you think you've got air ventilation, you're breathing this stuff. It's bad for you. It's cumulative. In the long run, you want to be able to do this to age 95 without being a long ass, on oxygen. So anyhow, be safe and do it as cheaply as possible.
All right, everybody can hear me now. With my birds, with the crooked neck, that's all cut apart, put together, turned 180 degrees, which leaves big sections like this, okay? This is my go-to tool for that. It's a Proxxon sander. The thing I like about it the most is it's got a soft side. So it will, I can see the curve, I can follow the curve, and I know I'm not gouging and digging in. These 6-inch sanding, I don't even know what you call them. They're fairly inexpensive, come in all kinds of different sanding grades. This is a mop.
A little strip sander that.
Yeah, it's a belt sander is what it's called. Again, the new sanding, I buy those from Klingspor, the belts themselves. Their delivery is spectacular. This I use on the inside of my vessels, okay? This again comes in varying grits. It's a kind of a bristle pad. I know they have them out here. Not using them as much as I used to. Maybe it's because I'm getting a better cut for finally after 15 years.
Would you chuck that up in the lathe or on a drill?
Usually on a drill. Usually, most of my sanding, 90% of it's done on a Fordham. I have a 3rd horsepower Fordham. I've got 2 of them. One at the workbench, one at the lathe. I just love sanding with it. This is the Fordham handle. Now this is a 1-inch pad. Use that again on the interior. And the thing I like about it is I can press like this. So it makes it easier to go down the inside of my hollow form. And again, I'm going to set at my bench to do this and bring this down. Now I got a 6-foot cable on my Fordham, both Fordhams, so I've got plenty of distance I can move around. This one, this is a mop, and I couldn't find my mop. That tells you how often I use it, okay? These are different layers of different sandpapers, and you go inside and do something similar. This does the same thing. Also, for the curves on the neck, this is used on a spindle sander, okay? But it fits a Fordham. So now I can go inside the curve with this and have a better feel for the curve and where I'm going. That's probably 80 grit on there, which I don't really use. You just unscrew this, the rubber gets smaller, it slides off. This is the same thing that's homemade, okay? JP Neff makes these out of Canada somewhere. I think it's Ontario. I'll put this on the table over there. I'll give that to the club. Hand sanding. None of us like doing that. But there's certain times and places we have to. These are out of the automotive business. Again, they're from Klingspor, okay? These are changeable. You can also spin them and rotate them. So you get into a different spot, clean spot all the time. Use them all the time. They're always on the workbench. When I'm using my Fordham, usually I use wave paper. They sell that here also. When I buy it, I buy kits of 50 or 100. It's cheaper. Klingspor gives you a darn good discount on that when you're buying those kind of quantities. I also, for hand sanding, get these. They come, it's bent. I don't know if you can see that, or it has a taper to it. If you're doing some real detail work, especially after you've carved a piece, they come in varying grits. And yeah, it does look like a match. I use those a great deal on the birds in detail.
Where are those from?
That I had got on Amazon. And there's a whole section on Amazon when you start looking up Sandy. Then, I don't know if you guys use these. There's two types. These are for detail work, detail sanding. They come in different kits. I don't buy the kits anymore, but I keep this around as a reference for this sheet right here. I don't know if you can see that, Doug. It gives you the varying grits that each one of these is. Now, the goblet I've got back there with the top on it, all those little indentations were put in with a microcarver. So you get all kind of fuzz on the very edges, okay? And it's a pain in the ass. These take it off just lickety-split, okay? The problem is they're gone quickly. They don't hold up well. If you get too much speed, they deteriorate even faster. You don't cover as much ground, and all of a sudden you find out, I didn't bring, well, here's one that's smaller, but that's still pretty good size. And I'll run them down almost till they're totally gone. They just do a tremendous job. Then at times I'll use the Dremel, and you can see I've used that on pewter. I was too fast. So anytime you're sanding a metal like that, you're creating heat. Well, that's low heat pewter, so there's pewter now on there. When I was with Jimmy, he said, will you sit down and carve one of these pewters for me? So I started carving the pewter, and I was too fast. So he said, oh, take it over and melt it, it'll come off. Yeah, it did come off the whole end. The cutter come off the spindle, okay? So he just laughed and said, don't worry about it. I said, I'm not, they're cheap. And this is a brush type. It's the same as this, okay? And I use it again after I've carved a piece or done some embellishment to smooth out the areas where the peaks are. That's where you get your fuzz. Now, this I use on the interior of my hollow forms. You have to get down in as deep as far as you can. You always have to make sure you're that far in, okay? Because all of you guys are going to stick your finger in there. I know that. Now, let's talk about wet sanding. How many of you wet sand? There's a couple ways of doing it. You can use Mahoney's and wet sand with it. If I wet sand, especially green wood. Walnut oil, yeah. Mahoney's walnut, yeah. Madrone, 60% moisture. You have to sand it before it dries, otherwise it's contorted. You can't go back and do anything with it at that. So I will sand with water, and I might pour that much water in a glass and 3 drops of dishwasher soap. Foam it up. It is a lubricant, so your pad doesn't build up. I just love doing it that way. Greg Gallegos was the first one to tell us about that, and it really works on all green wood, especially if you're afraid. The more movement that you have, the faster you have to get it done, and now you're not allowing it to dry out because you're sanding wet. Help you?
3 drops of what, dish soap?
Yeah, just regular dish soap. I use, I don't forget what it is now, but I've got a big bottle in the shop because once in a while I do clean something up. So, any other questions? Any dish soap will work. It's a lubricant. I'm sorry, repeat it?
The wave disc, where do you get the wave disc?
The wave disc, Klingspor.
No, it wasn't that. Which one?
The spiral.
Like the little flappers?
Oh, those disc, flat disc, those I got off of Amazon. I would recommend you only get the best of them. I bought a 50 pack from Amazon, okay? And they are not Dremel. Dremels hold up. Those others I got, I couldn't get through that little cup, and I'd have to replace them. Don't be afraid to. I think the little disc that is a quick clip, I think they're $3 a piece. So, when you're doing a piece and you've added $3 to a piece, basically. So it's a little pricey, but it completes the job. Okay?
Any other questions? Okay, hang on. We got
Todd? No. If I wanted to wet sand this to cut down the dust, I would probably use Mahoney's walnut oil.
Why are you wet sanding?
To keep the dust on would be the only reason. I wouldn't wet sand this. I would stick with wet wood only, okay? Experiment with it, play with it. I'm the great experimenter. I'm down so many rabbit holes now. So, okay.
One of the things that I don't teach in the fundamentals class that I do is sanding. Because, to use Ron's term, it's a big rabbit hole. And it generates thousands of questions, some of which are answerable and some of them are like, have to try it. All right, so what I've brought in is what is genetically termed inertia sander. I thought we'd have a table behind us, but not so. So this is a Sorby. I've had this for many, many years. I've worn out a couple heads in it. And this is my go-to sander. A lot of people don't like these because there's a little bit of a knack to them. I want to dig out two heads here. All right, so I've modified mine, and I use a pad that screws in. Most of the ones you buy, and even Sorby, are like Peters, where you just have a pad and you have to put sandpaper on it, and then you pull it off, change the next one. These I can quickly change from one grit to another and still use the paper. I know that it's been used if it's on the pad. So the big thing about sanding that most people don't quite understand is it wears out fast. So a bowl like this, don't expect one of these to do the whole bowl. And you have to teach yourself when is it dull. And the easiest way is to feel it. So when you go home, you get one you've used and a brand new one, and just feel the difference in them. And so it's like, oh, that doesn't feel as sharp and gritty as a brand new one. It's time to change it. Because what happens is this paper, once it gets dull, you think you're sanding, but really what you're doing is burnishing the wood. And that works against you. You're not getting your tear out off and all the other things that you're working on, but you're also taking the fibers, if these are wood fibers, and you're bending them over, and they don't want to accept your finish. And then you wonder why all of a sudden you got this weird spot in your bowl when you're putting finish on it. It's because it's been burnished. And you can usually tell it by it'll become somewhat shiny. As soon as you see that, you know you got to use a fresh piece of sandpaper and get it so it's got that matte look to it again. Is that what you find? All right, so the,
Gotta back up a couple grits and take it off.
yeah. So the trick to this whole thing is, you know, a lot of guys, I got to put that face shield on. I don't want to. Whoa. There we go. I haven't worn one of these. This is a machinist shield. I haven't worn one of these in a long time. The trick to them, can you, I don't know if you're going to be able to do overhead or not.
Did it shut off?
Might have to move in or move the head over. It is wider than I thought it would be. Yeah, it's pretty good. So we're on, where are we? There, that'll work.
We got this half, so don't be working on the wrong side. Yeah, there's those turning grooves I left there.
These? Oh, these tool marks?
Yeah, those horrible tool marks. No, the ring's below it.
Let me get some sharp paper. The ring's below it, yeah. I think he'd get upset if I did that. It's already got warp in it. So let me see what we got here. We got to work fairly high. So a lot of people will take and put these flat on and just kind of rub the wood, which is not what they're meant to do. You want it to turn. So I'm using a fairly hard pad, and I'm also going backwards, which is the problem with these.
We're in reverse.
Yeah, I'm in reverse on purpose.
Oh,
I'm going to change. I don't have that problem with this. So this is, can you get this on your overhead? This is a new one that I just got, you know, within the last month. It was 44 bucks. It comes with 3 different sizes of heads. Where's the other one? It's probably at the shop. And the main head. And the thing that's nice about this versus the Sorby is these all mount, they have a magnetic mount. So they just go in, you can change the heads by just pulling this out and putting a different on. So here's my 2-inch. And it's made to go in a collet type tool, or you can turn a tool handle and glue it in, whatever you like to do. I'm not used to wires.
I had that on your back.
So this one doesn't matter which direction it's spinning. Okay?
Yep.
So the idea is to just, your sanding is not in line, so if I took a piece of sandpaper and held it on there, I'd get radial scratches. The idea of having something that turns is you're getting cross friction, cross sanding. And that's what you really want, because that's what's going to take out all the tool marks. I'm working on one of Doug's tool marks here.
I left those on purpose for you.
Thank you. So, with a sander, I don't know, Doug's going to do a drill type. You have to think about two things. What's the surface look like? Now, you can see this surface is arced. It's a cove. I'm using a flat. It's not going to fit into that very well, so then you want to get into using a pad. Haven't even opened them. And this would be the same on a drill type. So now I got a pad on there that's going to contort to the shape that I'm working on. The problem with using a soft pad is if you have a wood that has hard grain and softwood, it'll dip in and start dishing out between the grain. So you want to use a hard pad when you can. So that's all there is to it, is just letting it rotate. And so this, where I'm touching the wood here, okay, is what's driving it, but I'm sanding in the cross pattern. You can see how the dust is coming off to the side.
What's your RPM?
230. And it's already starting to get warm. Which is the other thing you don't want to do, is build up heat on your work, because you'll get microfractures in there. You'll also melt the adhesives that's holding all this stuff together. This is a Sorby tool, same darn thing. It's a 1 inch. So you can start getting into smaller areas if you want to work on them. But it's the same process. I don't have any paper on this, but it's the same process. You put it on and she'll rotate. If you want to change the rotation, you just tip it the other direction. So one of the things I hear people complain about with a disc sander is, especially if they're using a hard pad, is that it's only the center of the pad. I keep looking in the wrong place. It's only the center of the pad that's actually doing the sanding. So I wear out the center, but the outside of it's, take the same pad, go in, and it's just the opposite. Now the outside edges of the pad are doing the work, and the center's not. So you can get a lot of usage out of it just by working both in and out with the same piece of sandpaper. Questions? Because I'm done.
Did you ever sand between the beads?
Would you sand those beads?
In between?
Oh, the beads?
Yeah.
Not with this.
No. I use pipe sand. It comes in a row.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And you can get it in different thicknesses?
I've not used that.
Oh, it's fantastic between the people.
Usually what I use is a very thin piece of plexiglass with the sandpaper against it, and I can work it. And you need the backer. A lot of guys will take a piece of sandpaper and fold it. It's already too thick to get down in the beads. So you got to have a backer and a sheet of sandpaper just dropping into that groove.
Pipes you tear off, you throw it over.
Huh, no, I've never used that.
What's the diameter of that pipe then? It's like thread or what?
Oh, yeah, so you can get it down to thread.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll have a big
Hey, Bruce, you mind repeating that discussion that's going on about other ways to sand beads?
They were talking about a pipe. It's like cloth pipe that you can get, and you can get it down to as small as a thread to get between those beads.
where do you get them from, Ron?
Klingsport. And then the other comment was, put your beads farther apart. You won't have to worry about it.
Thanks.
What's the question? Should you sand at low RPM? Yes. I always sand at low RPMs or the lathe off. So, because you're just going to burnish
You don't
your
want to
wood.
build up heat.
Yeah, it's just going to get hot and it'll burnish your wood.
The other thing that is a huge mistake that most newer turners, not newer turners, people that haven't finished wood very much, is they use too much pressure. You know, it's like, I gotta really make that sandpaper do its thing. All it's doing is getting and filling in the paper, and so now the whole thing's just sliding on the wood and burnishing it. You know, the trick is just enough pressure that the paper touches the wood, and you can see dust coming off. The other thing is, don't be afraid to stop. I use an air hose, but don't be afraid to stop and just blow it off, blow your sandpaper out, and go back to sanding. Because the pores will get fine dust in them, and that makes the sandpaper want to slide more.
Questions? And the question is, what's the grits that you go through from start to finish when you're sanding like a bowl? What grit do you start at?
No matter how good I got it cut, I start at 120, go to 180, 240, 320, 400.
When do you use a sander sealer?
Sometimes I don't. I know some people, we won't say who, use a sanding sealer all the time. I would use sanding sealer if I have a wood that is very porous. And I want to stabilize it. Soft, if it's got soft grain, say red cedar. I want to harden the softwood some, and so I use a sanding sealer to do that. If I'm going to finish it with wax, I'll put sanding. I use shellac sanding sealer, so it's shellac mixed 50-50 with DNA, denatured alcohol. I'll put that on and I'll sand it, and then I'll use Yorkshire grit, and then I'll finish it up with Canuba wax. I'll buff Canuba wax onto it, and that makes a great finish. That's it.
Any other questions? Ken?
Any secrets to keeping these smaller versions that can move on the piece while you're using it?
Keeping what on there?
Like a 1-inch disc that can move.
Any secrets to keeping the like a small 1-inch disc on your hook and loop so it doesn't keep coming off?
You're going to love this answer. Less pressure.
Yeah,
I've had some.
if
I've
it's-
had some that just don't stay on, and I think it's bad batch. You know, because especially with that little 1-inch sander, I'll be using that and a disc, and I'll get it open a batch, and the disc will come off, and it's like, what in the heck's going on here? You know, and I'll grab a 2-inch disc and put it on the 1-inch sander, stays on fine. So it's a sandpaper. It's not the hooks. You can melt those hooks. If you're going fast, using a lot of pressure, you can build up enough heat, you'll melt those hooks, and then they don't work.
Any other questions? Tom, I think you're up next.
Can you hear me now?
And I just wanted to make a couple comments on the stuff that Bruce just talked about, because I use 2-inch disc, 2 and 3-inch disc in a drill to get all my sanding. I'll use a 5 1/4 inch like DA to do the outside of bowls if they don't have anything on them. With those 2-inch discs, I have one for every grit, the spindle and everything. I got them all lined up from 120 all the way up to 600, and I have the same thing with the 300. With the 3-inch disc, I got them all. So I've made the investment of buying all those mandrels and all the proper interface, because for the higher grit you want a softer interface. For like 120, you would use like a really hard surface, but if you've got a 400 grit, you want a really spongy interface between the disc and the mandrel. And the reason I do that is those get hot, they just come apart. You ruin them. So if you have one for every grit, as soon as I'm done with 120 or 150, whatever I start at, it's just starting to get warm and I'm done. I'm moving to the next one. I'm not using the same one for the next grit. I've got a cold one here and I'm starting all over again. And you can get through all of them. You can go fast. You're less apt to tear them things apart. Now, is that an investment? Yeah, it's quite an investment, because those, I think they're like $8 for the little piece and then all the interfaces. But once you make that investment, you'll stop tearing them things apart. You won't end up with a whole box of them where they're tore apart and you've got to glue them all back together. Another thing that I do when I get up to the higher grits, and you, like Bruce said, you can feel the difference that you're wearing them out. When I get up to 320 and 400, I don't take that fresh 320 and stick it on my bowl that I just sanded the 220. I think it's too rough. I'll take that and I'll stick it on a board somewhere, and I'll take that first grit off it so it's not so tearing up, because I'll find that the 400, you have a hard time getting that 320 off. So when I get up those higher grits, I don't stick a fresh one on there and just start cutting in my bowl, because I'll find when I'm finishing it and putting my lacquer on, I can see some of those grooves that were just a little deeper than the 400 took off. So I take the grit off, not all of it, but I take the edge off it. I take the sharpness off by sticking it on a board. I got a board on my shelf there. It's all nice and smooth for me doing this for 10 years. But and take that off, and then I'll go and start sanding it, and work through. So it's an investment, to buy all them pieces. But in the long run, you'll be much happier because you can just go right through them, So, go ahead. You're on. Tom Penninga.
Thank you. Tom Ramsey, who's a member, I haven't seen him in a while, he said, I'm a lot better sander than I am a wood turner. And his stuff looks good, but he does a lot more sanding than some people who say, I never sand. I hate sanding. Well, I don't mind sanding. But I do find that, like Bruce said, how do you know when you're as soon as you change sandpaper, you realize you should have changed before. It's like, oh, yeah, that's right. This is how it's supposed to work. Well, one of the things I use a lot of is an air-powered orbital sander. And this spins a lot faster than a drill. And so I use this all the time. It's compact. I can get way inside things with it, where maybe with a drill I can't get with it. I buy these from Wood Turning Wonders. I've tried a number of different kinds of pads. That's one type. This is another type. This one works really good on resin, but I found this type here, the green, there's a name for it, I don't quite remember what the name is, with the different edges. I do a lot of production turning where I got to sand a lot of them, and time is money. This works fantastic for me. So I use this. In fact, I've ordered another one because this one is wearing out. It's not just a round thing, it's got an offset weight in it, so it is even if it isn't spinning, it's sanding. So you can really, especially flat surfaces, this works really well. A couple other techniques that haven't been talked about that I do. On the outside of bowls to remove tool marks, I use this thing, and it smooths out all my tool marks, no problem. So I'll put like 80 grit in there, and away it goes. Another tip I use, I do a lot of platters, and the trick to get a platter that's perfectly smooth across it is, I don't care how good you are with the tool, you get these little waves if you feel it. And if you're a wood turner, that's what you hold it up to the light, and you'll see those little. So after a lot of trial and error, I use a 40 grit in this thing, and it smooths out all that stuff. And then I sand from there. So it does. It's just no, but this, yeah.
Try roofing.
Try what?
Roofing.
Roofing?
24 grit.
Yeah, I could do that. I'm just saying, if you have a big flat surface and you want to make it plain and flat and not have ridges in it after you put your finish on, this works for me. The sandpaper I use, I've gone to, is I don't usually, on bowls, I hand sand the inside. I buy this Abranet from Mirka, and I buy it in rolls, and I just have it on a piece of PVC pipe, all the different grits, and I cut off a new piece when I need it. And some scissors that my wife is never going to use because it wrecks your scissors, but, well, not the one she used for sewing or whatever. Buy one at a garage sale, but this stuff I buy in the rolls, and it works really well for me. This is Abranet. And what's nice about Abranet is that you can just go like that, and all the dust will come out of it, and it won't be quite as good as it was the last time, but it lasts a long time. So I use that. And the last thing I do that some people don't do is I make this paste. I can pass this around. It's made of beeswax, boiled linseed oil, and diatomaceous earth. Some people use pumice in it instead of diatomaceous earth. But when you put it on your wood, as it's spinning and you're holding like a paper towel with this stuff on it, it keeps breaking down more and more and more. So it's gradually becoming a finer and finer sandpaper for you. I also find this works really good for finding tool marks that you didn't see before, because once you put this on, you'll see, gosh, I got a little line right there. So then I gotta go back and sandpaper and do it again. But this thing is kind of a reveal that will show you where you might have had a tool mark that you never saw when it was just rough wood like this. So I make this in a crock pot. I make about 10 of these at a time. The ratio is supposed to be like 7 or 8 oil to 1 of beeswax and 1 of diatomaceous earth by weight. I usually start at 6 and then let it congeal, and then if it's not moist enough, I turn on a crock pot again, let it all melt, and then add a little more boiled linseed oil until I get the texture that I want. So, any questions on any of that?
Tom, can you apply normal finishes over that?
Can you apply normal finishes over that?
Yes, as long as you wipe it all off.
Could you lacquer it after it's cured?
I've tried. I haven't tried. Yeah, I have. Yeah, it works. Fine. I use beeswax normally or carnauba wax because if I'm doing something like tops or kaleidoscopes, I need to get them done in a hurry, and as soon as I finish this, I wipe it off, put the beeswax on, burnish that, and I'm done. So carnauba wax is a little harder, so it lasts a little longer.
The question was, have you tried using a die grinder with a round, like 2-inch head on it?
I thought about it, but I never did. I found this thing, and it's sort of like a die grinder. It really spins fast. And you can get these from Wood Turning Wonders is where I bought mine. Okay.
Yeah. Is that
Any
it?
other questions?
Any more questions? Okay. So Colleen had mentioned earlier, how do you get those tool marks out of the bottom from your round nose scraper? Is that what you do with a round nose scraper? Because that's what I did. This one was a round nose scraper. I didn't see what yours looked like. Is yours? Here, catch this, Dave.
Yeah, so like just on the end grain.
Okay. Do you get it that smooth with yours?
Yeah.
Or so then what you get it looks different later?
I guess I just didn't sand enough.
Okay.
Sandpaper's too old, for sure. That's what I've learned today.
Got to be. I don't get. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
It's the cheapest thing we have in tools.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, it's like Ron just said. It's the cheapest tool you have in your shop. I'm quick to just change it. If I think, it just seems like I'm pressing too hard, it's time to change it. You just throw it. You're talking. I don't know how much one of those little 2-inch discs cost, but. Yeah, and then you realize, I should have done this 10 minutes ago. Here, I've been wasting my time. So I'm quick to just change them up, And if you find you're pressing hard, you're defeating the purpose of it. You're ruining your tools. So, and then let's see, what else was I going to say? With oil, I use wet sanding. If I'm going to do a finish, like I did on that walnut bowl back there that came apart, I did a hard wax oil on that. I wet sanded that hard wax oil on for the last 2 coats. I did. I got my regular drill with a 400 grit wavy paper, like the wavy that they showed there, because the wavy paper in a smaller vessel or even in this size vessel won't leave an edge. Sometimes that crisp edge will cut right into this, and you'll see that if you're not moving. You'll see a little edge, and I'll even see that. I don't sand my bowls with the lathe going. I power sand it with it off, but I'll still see that little edge where I'm going around, and it'll just leave a little line. I'll have little lines going through there. If you use the wavy paper, it doesn't leave those lines. And then what I'll do is if I know I'm putting an oil on, or if I'm going to use a walnut oil, anything that I would consider food safe, I always sand that in with the 400 grit paper. Power sand it in and get it all nice and wet, and then power sand it, and then wipe it dry, as dry as you can get it. Maybe let it sit for 10 minutes, and then wipe it as dry as you can get it, and then I'll coat it again. And then I got the sandpaper squares. I forget what those called. I bought them here, and they don't always have them. Is Ken in the room? But you can get like 8 to 1200 grit, or you can get 12 to 1500 grit, and a sponge back. With a sponge back, and then I'll use that and do the next coat. On that one, I used like the 8 to 1200, and I called it good. It looked good on that. But that, when I put the hard wax oil on that, I could see spirals in there in the light from previous sandpaper, somewheres in probably my 300 or 400 or maybe 220 that I didn't get all the way up. But as soon as I put that finish on, I could see that. So that was when I said, okay, I'm just going to power sand this with the oil at 400, and then I do it. I can still kind of almost see the swirls, I'm doing it that way, and so then I just take little squares, and then I'll turn the lathe on, and with the grain, go through and clean up the rest of that, and then it usually takes those spirals out. So then people ask me, Doug, how do you get inside those vessels with all the holes in there? There's lots of ways of doing that. I have a bunch of hand sanders because I can't turn it on. It's got a hole in it, you know. So I'm in there with a sander and just go through my grits, you know, and reach in there and just start sanding it, you know. And like Ron says, you got to get it down at least that far down. Or if it's got a big hole in there, you've got to get the opposite side of that hole because people can look right in there and see the other side. Yes. So then go into the hole with your drill, and you can get in there and go all the way around it. You know, I don't turn the lathe on, but I'm just, everything you can see through that hole, I get, and I can get all the way to the bottom too with this. And take off the nub at the bottom and try to clean the bottom up as much as possible. And then this was a tip that George Armstrong showed, I don't know, a few years ago. I get in there with that, and I can get in there and go around the hole and get up and down and go through the whole thing. And it's really hard for these not to come apart because you're inside there, and if you get close to that hole, it rips this thing right apart, you know. So I have to be careful, but that's how I get inside. I got 2 or 3 of these that I've made. This is made from parts from Harbor Freight. They make a little angle drill that's got a flexible, this thing inside there is flexible, and I just ground it down and hammered a 3/4 inch copper pipe on it. So I got something to hang on to, and I got another one that's quite long that I can get way into those deep vessels with. But that's another way that I get in those vessels and kind of just work around, get it down, you know. Inside a vessel, once you get that to about 150, it really looks pretty good because you can't get your hand on it very well. And at 150, you can get rid of a lot of it. And then if I go back in with some 220 and clean it up, I always say I'm going to stop at 220, but I always go to 300 or 400 because I just can't stop, you know. But which I don't know what. Yeah. So those are how I do the. My hollow forms that have holes in them. The biggest tip I can give is you want to have a good finish when you're done turning, so you don't have to sand out all them tool marks. You know, so this here I think I use a bowl gouge all the way to the bottom, and then this I didn't use my bowl gouge to the very bottom because I couldn't get this bottom corner, so then I use a round nose scraper. And get in there and get that round nose scraper, not flat, but lift it just a little bit. And then come in there and just clean that up around the corner, and you can get that bottom. Right now, it won't take much sanding to finish that. So yeah, a good turning and sharp tools really reduces a lot of sanding. So, any questions? Anything at all? Somebody had asked me earlier about keeping a sharp edge on something. If I'm trying to keep a sharp edge, like if I wanted this really sharp. I would sand this side, and then I would sand this side. I wouldn't put anything on this edge until I'm all the way up to like 320. And then I'd turn this on, and I'd lay it down there and just take the edge off just a little bit. It'll flatten it, but it'll still look sharp and crisp. Now, like these, I wouldn't even sand these beads. Most beads, if I've cut those with my spindle gouge, that's sharper than sandpaper. I won't even bother getting into those grooves. I would just leave that. I would try to sand up to the front here because I got some tool marks there. So I'd try to sand up to it, but I would not sand these beads. Most times you turn something with a spindle gouge, if you are doing a fairly good job, that's sharp. That's better than what your sandpaper is. All I'll do is at the very end, I would come through and take some probably steel wool and steel wool those off, because if you don't do something to them, you've sanded all this to 400. This just won't look the same when you put your finish on. So to make the finish look the same, then I'll go over everything with some steel wool or maybe some 600 grit paper by hand. I just get in there and just kind of go around, fold it, get into the grooves, just so it has the same texture as everything else. That when I put my sanding sealer on, because I'm that guy, I put sanding sealer on everything unless I'm going to do an oil base, you know, like wax oil or walnut oil or something like that. Then I won't use a sanding sealer, but I sanding seal everything I do just to help the finish look consistent. You know, you won't, if you don't sanding seal this, like where you have these knots or where you got some in grain like right here, it'll absorb that finish faster than this side grain will. And you'll notice that. I got a flat spot here. It's a dull, but everything else came out really nice and shiny. Well, why didn't that? It's because it's in grain. It's just absorbing like a sponge, anything you put there. So sanding sealer will seal that and stop it from absorbing anymore. So when you put your final finish on, it all comes out even.
So do you sand after the sanding seal dries?
Yes. Yeah, I always sand all the way up to 320, and then I put on the sanding sealer. And then I'll usually back up to 220 and go through the last 3 grits, 220, 320, 400, and then I'll finish it. So, but that's my process on all of them after I've sanded it. Of course, I'm not done sanding. I'm putting sanding sealer on, and I'm going one more time. So, you know, the finish the sanding. So, any other questions? I think that concludes this demonstration. So, thank you, everybody.